Greetings, friends, from Ames Chapel. We are pausing for Good Friday. And with our Christian friends, we re-enter the dramatic narrative of the betrayal of Jesus, his arrest, crucifixion, death, and burial. And all throughout, to remember the steadfast love of God. We pause this afternoon in this solemn moment as a light that has come into the world fades and the darkness deepens. This Holy Week, you may remember, began with such high messianic expectations, each moment alive with the promise that a new future was stirring, was gathering, that people would be set free from their fear and confinement, that a new future was sweeping its way toward us. And for the early church, living on the tiptoe and straining their eyes toward the horizon, they asked, when? When, God? When? When will the days of tribulation end and our deliverance from fear and suffering finally arrive? When? When the disciples asked Jesus, Jesus told them this curious parable from the Christian scriptures. But about when, about that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son of the human, but only God who is Abba, Father. But be aware, keep awake, for you do not know when that time will come. It is like a man going on a journey, when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with their work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will return, in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or early at dawn, so that you may not be found sleeping when he returns. So what I say to you all, keep awake. Expectations were indeed high, but on this Good Friday afternoon, hope gives way to betrayal and suffering and lamentation. The light fades in the growing shadow of the cross. And from the cross, Jesus speaks 7 times. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Jesus looks out and he asks for forgiveness for the crowds who have no idea of what they are doing. The light has come into the world and the darkness deepens. Then to the second repentant thief who sees the innocence of Jesus and asks Jesus to remember him when he comes into his new kingdom, Jesus speaks a second time. Truly I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise. The light fades as the shadows deepen. Jesus speaks for the third time, seeing his mother and the disciple whom he loves standing near. And he provides for his mother, entrusting her into his care. Woman, here is your son. And turning to his disciple, son, here is your mother. And the disciple, we are told, took her into his care. The light fades as the shadow of the cross deepens. We are told that it was about 3 in the afternoon as darkness continues to deepen over the whole land. And in the agony of his isolation and abandonment, of his fear and despair, Jesus cries out and speaks a fourth time, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? For those of us who are familiar with the 7 last sayings of Jesus, this is what draws our attention on this Good Friday. Less the words about completion or victory, less even the words where Jesus expresses his concern for the welfare of his friends. What draws our attention and recognition is this cry from the one who was utterly human, who felt forsaken and alone, betrayed and abandoned. So much so that he even felt abandoned by Abba, God, with nowhere to hide from suffering and from his mortal condition. And we are all asking, when will these days of tribulation end and our deliverance arrive? The light fades and the shadows deepen. When the early church asked, when will the days of tribulation end? And that's when the early church remembered this curious parable passed down through the history. Keep awake, for you do not know when. It might be in the evening, or at midnight, or at the crow of rooster, or early at dawn. And the early church, they understood, because at evening is when Judas slips out into the night of betrayal. They understood this parable because at midnight, when all the disciples are fast asleep, the soldiers arrive and all the disciples run away. The early church understood this parable because when the rooster crows is when Peter denies his teacher 3 times. The early church understood this parable about when, because early at dawn, the religious authorities, all of them hand over Jesus to the Roman authorities. When asked, when are the days of the suffering and tribulation coming to an end, Jesus offers a parable about staying awake at precisely those moments when there is no hiding from our human condition, when we must choose between courage and fear, between faith and despair. Stay awake, says Jesus. Stay awake precisely in those moments when everything feels like loss and isolation and forsakenness. Stay awake to the presence of the holy precisely in those moments. And exhausted, Jesus asked for a drink, saying, I'm thirsty. And the light begins to fade further as darkness deepens. And exhausted, Jesus looks upon the world and says, it is finished. And in the deepening darkness of the shadow of the cross, Jesus looks upon humanity and he cries out, Father, Abba, into your hands I commend my spirit. And he breathed his last. and as night deepens, we stay awake.